truth to power, to let people know what the actual records are. I'm not going to throw any punches below the belt, but it's absolutely appropriate to make it clear that Ms. Mosby's record is terrible and Mr. Bates's record is even worse. But I also want to be clear that I've been in the community in Baltimore my entire life. Not only did my parents dedicate their lives to the public schools of Baltimore, I coached debate at Frederick Douglass. I am on the teen court program that is a diversion program for juveniles. I help with charter schools in East Baltimore and West Baltimore. I have mentored children. I've done these things, but I don't do it in the spotlight. I don't do it for press conferences. I do it because it is a life of public service that I learned from my parents, that I have tried to achieve in every way, in every day, without telegraphing it or publicizing it or broadcasting it. I'm proud of what I've done for Baltimore. I'm proud of my career.
Closing statements.
You can respond to that as well, right?
Well, now wait, based on the rule.
No, he responded to mine.
No,
They all had a response to
The
mine.
way it went, I asked the state's attorney the question, I asked you attorney, and then I asked him. Now, I don't have any problem, I was given instructions that we didn't want to agree with the Q&A.
No, but my thing was, you asked me a question, Mrs. Mosby responded, Mr. Vignerotta responded. You asked her a question, Mr. Vignerotta responded, and I
Sir, I'm
responded.
prepared to go to 9:30.
Well, I mean, I feel we get to respond to that.
Sounds like we
question.
figured out who objected.
No, we didn't.
I'm looking at the clock, I'm looking at the clock, trying to make sure each of you get 2 minutes of closing statements. That's the reason why I'm trying to expedite that. You wanna pass on, you tell
I
me?
think that's totally wrong. Totally wrong.
I don't mind you responding, I'm
I'm-
just saying,
I'm
but I
very
won't be able
happy
to
to
get,
respond.
based on the clock. I
I'm
can't.
more than happy to respond.
Okay, go ahead.
I think, Larry, what we have to understand from Mr. Vignerotta, I don't think he knows the difference between North Avenue and Northern Parkway because he has not put the time into our city. He's only in this race to do what? To stop me from winning. When we sit down and look at Howard County, Ms. Mosby forgets I lived in Reservoir Hill since 1997. When I had my house, her and her husband used to come over to my house for parties. She forgets that because, I don't know why. She forgets the fact that because my mother was sick and handicapped, I purchased her a house in Howard County, and I have been in Baltimore City my entire career. That last trial, I'm glad that her career achievement is winning a misdemeanor count on a repeat violent offender for time served. That tells you the lack of experience, Larry, and that tells you exactly why Ms. Mosby has not been getting the job done. Time served on a misdemeanor on a repeat violent offender. That's not something I'd be proud of.
So in rebuttal, again, I'm not sure why my opponent continues to put out inaccurate misinformation. Maybe he needs to look up case search. And because he's never tried a murder case, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It was an attempted murder. I got a conviction on first degree assault, which is a felony, and you should
Trial
probably.
transcript, Larry, so we can go ahead and read it right here if we want.
In any event.
I'm gonna reduce the time, the 2-minute time, if we don't stay within the conform. I should tell you, this is my 9th one in 20 years. I've never had one possibly as disagreeable as this one, but it's good radio for certain people.
So again, this is, it's just another example of my opponent exaggerating and putting out misinformation and straight up lies. It's rather unfortunate that he would do that. In any event, the one thing, is this closing?
No.
Oh, okay. This is just rebuttal to his record? Okay, well,
It got
it
started
speaks
that
for
way, I'm
itself.
gonna let, let's put this way, I can take your bill up to 9:30, but I'm gonna
It
stop
speaks for
right after this,
itself.
unless that's why you want to make a statement.
But this is the closing statements now?
Not yet. You finished? No, nothing to say.
Here's what I will say,
I thought so.
which is the fact that they are bickering about whether they won 1 or 2 cases over the course of their career is all you need to know about the lack of record that they both have. We have to get beyond this. One person was on one side of Freddie Gray, the other person was on the other side of Freddie Gray, but we have to move forward. We cannot sit here and engage in this bickering when there are real issues, real challenges that Baltimore faces. We had the worst murder surge, the lowest level of confidence in Baltimore history, and we need a proven prosecutor to get us back on track. I'm the only one with a record that I don't have to sit here and pretend I won a case here or won a case there. And with that, I'm ready for closing statements if you are, Larry.
I thought we were going the same order in which we started.
I put it first. I'm only going over what my producers given to me.
The same order in which we started, I was last. Mr. Vignerotta was first, Ms. Mosby was second, and I was last.
Following y'all. I was first.
Or Ms. Mosby started.
The person started first, was gonna start last. Bates, 2 minutes.
Well, I think when we sit down and we look at what's going on in Baltimore, it's simple. We have individuals who are at the helm and they believe they're doing a good job, they're trying, but it's just not getting done. 1,125 murders. And when we sit down and look at experience, I have 23 years experience, I don't need to lie about whether or not I tried a murder case. The homicide detective has told the world that I was the trier attorney, but yet they wish to distract you from what's really happening, which is the violence that has engulfed our city. We need change, Baltimore. And do you want to really continue the same old things with the same old tired ideas, or do you want to have someone who's been on both sides? I don't need to sit down and defend my record. My record speaks for itself. I have built an amazing law practice. I have done more cases, more trials than both of these individuals up here together combined. I do not have cases overturned, and I go to the courtroom and I fight for the people. The same way I have fought as a defense attorney, and the same way I've fought as a prosecutor at every single level, I will fight for you. The question is simple, Baltimore. Do you want to continue down this path of 300+ murders? Do you want to continue down this path of no leadership? Do you want to continue down the path of prosecutors leaving and abandoning the ship as it's sinking? Or do you want to do something different? We can have it change when we hold violent offenders accountable, but make sure we give second chances. Some people talk about it, I do it. Every single step of the way it has been done. Now I hear the noise, they want to sit down and talk to distract you from the record. But the record is simple. Just go open your door, whether in East Baltimore, West Baltimore, South Baltimore, wherever, and crime has engulfed our city. We are not safe, and we are afraid. If you really want that change, then I vote for Ivan Bates for state's attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for having this again. My name is Thuru Vignaraja. The anger that you hear from Mr. Bates is what happens when you don't have a record to run on. The vitriol that you hear from Ms. Mosby is when you have presided over the worst murder surge in Baltimore in city history and have not been able to figure out what to do about it. Larry, what's interesting about today's debate is not just how disagreeable it is the lack of denials. Ms. Mosby doesn't deny that she drops 40% of cases months after she indicts them. Mr. Bates doesn't deny that he's only got a handful of trial convictions total, either as a lead prosecutor or as part of the team. These are not the records that we can run on. When Ms. Mosby is dropping 40% of gun prosecutions and losing 2/3 of those that go to trial with only a total 17% conviction rate at trial, and Mr. Bates is criticizing that even when he has a 60% drop rate and only has, I can count on one hand the number of trial convictions he's ever secured over the course of his career, we have a problem. We need a serious prosecutor who's been doing this for years. I've been a federal prosecutor, a city prosecutor, and the Deputy Attorney General of Maryland. A couple of my convictions have been reversed, and every single one of them has been re-convicted on remand, and every single one of them is in prison today. You gotta have a conviction to get an appeal, and unfortunately Mr. Bates and Ms. Mosby don't necessarily know what that is. What we have here today is a situation where Baltimore City needs a proven prosecutor. This is what I have dedicated my life to. We are not fooling around. This is a serious issue, and it is a time for serious conversations, not the bickering and backbiting, not the lack of denials and the finger pointing, but a moment where clarity and policy and leadership is what is needed. It is what I have done my whole career. It is what I will deliver as state's attorney. Larry, thank you so much for having us.
So what I'll say is that I'm invested in this city, and what you've seen in the past 3 years is my office has epitomized resilience in the face of chaos. And unlike my opponents, I'm not gonna get up here and say to you that I'm going to reduce homicides by half and cut them in half, because what my opponent has failed to tell you is that he wants me to be a part of this no tolerance policing, this stop and frisk mentality, because that's what he did. When you talk about justice over convictions, for him, it was convictions at all costs, even at the backs of Black and brown people. So my other opponent, on the other hand, wants to talk about how he has this undefeated record, and he's put out so much misinformation that it's unfair to the voters of Baltimore City for them to believe anything. At a time when public trust of the police department is at an all-time high, we cannot afford to have a state's attorney that we cannot trust. That's first and foremost. When I tell you that my record speaks for itself, having to work with 4 police commissioners in 3 years, the fact that we've had all of these external, unprecedented external challenges, I am extremely proud of the fact that my prosecutors each and every day get into these courtrooms and they're still able to produce. Having a 95% felony conviction rate. I'm not gonna include drop cases. I'm not going to include unconstitutional policing practices in my conviction rates. I'm going to ensure that justice is always applied fairly and equally to everybody. I am an independent prosecutor, and I can tell you that I am invested in Baltimore City. I live in the heart of West Baltimore. I don't have to turn on the news and open up the newspaper to see the violence plague in my community. All I have to do is open up my door, and I did not have to move back here in order to run for state's attorney. This city needs reform, and we've started that. We have more work to do, and I'm going to be the next state's attorney, and I'm committed to doing so.
The the early voting starts tomorrow. I want to encourage everybody about that. And those, 30 seconds, those who would like to reach out to you to find out where they can be of some help to you.
Go to Ivan Bates, Ivan at ivanbates.com, Ivan at ivanbates.com. Go to my website, and once again, www.ivanbates.com. Thank you.
Thuru Vignaraja for Baltimore. You can go to thuruforbaltimore.com. The last name Vignaraja is the same teachers that a lot of you guys learned from. Mr. V, Miss V, Mr. Vignaraja, Miss Vignaraja. Thanks again, Larry.
You can go to marilynmosby.com, and that's where you can find my website.
Thank all 3 of you for joining us this morning, and we expect if you will be so kind, once you win, you can come back and talk to the people of Baltimore and speak among them.
I'd be honored.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
We have 2, we got